And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Always Pressing PGA DFS podcast, special edition, recording for you tonight as Jesse and I are going to talk some web.com golf. As we know, as the Safeway Open is kicking off this week, 25 new graduates entered the PGA Tour this year. So in order to talk about some of these graduates and just general life on the tour and other good web.com conversations, Jesse and I are going to be joined by Kevin Prise. You can find him on Twitter at WebTourKevin. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Doing great, guys. Thank you for having me on. Much appreciated as the PGA Tour season gets ready to kick off after that very lengthy off season.
Yep. Yeah, I guess if we calculated it out, it was like maybe 10 days or something. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, we were joking in the office. Monday morning was like, we had 9 a.m. till noon was the off season. and then onward to Safeway. And then I'm Q school going. I'm headed to Alabama to cover a site the next couple of days. I love the Q school, but wave of guys coming up.
We don't have that question on there, but you opened up with it. What do you kind of get when you're at the Q school? What do you like about the Q school?
Oh, I love the Q school. You have the 3 stages, the pre-qualifying, and then the first, second, and final stage. And you go to these, small towns. Like I'm going to Dothan, Alabama, and it's just a completely different scene. And it's just the guys. There's the cross of guys who have been on the web tour and lose their cards and trying to get it back, and then rookies right out of school like Doc Redman, who played at Clemson and had a great career. And he, these guys get these tour opportunities, but if they don't take advantage, you have to go work your way through all the 3 stages of Q school. And then guys like Anthony Palucci, who was a #1 ranked junior a few years ago and trying to get back through first stage. And it's just, you see guys at every level and guys who have been junior and amateur champions 15 years ago still trying, and some of these young guys, and you have to make it through all the stages. It's a meritocracy, merit-based thing. You have to finish at the top third of the field or so at 3 different stages. So I find it fascinating, and I go and just try to find some stories, old school reporting at the Q school, because it's different than a normal tournament where you're trying to give the updates and the coverage kind of in the moment. Q school, it's more about who gets through as opposed to like the play-by-play of each day. Like I don't even go for all 4 days. I just go for the last 2. This 3rd and 4th rounds, but I love it. I tell my boss it's like my favorite 2 weeks of the year is going to first and second stage, because there's no real pressure other than just finding stories, which is kind of like, my roots in this, I guess. So it's cool.
Nice. Very interesting. Let's talk some web.com here. What exactly, because you already said you're going to the Q school, you work at the office from time to time. What is your actual role with the web.com?
So I manage the digital content. My technical title is senior digital producer. So it's basically overseeing whether it's the video and the website and the stories and the graphics. And I definitely have a lot of support from the PGA Tour side. So I work in PGA Tour Digital, which is in St. Augustine, Florida, out of the World Golf Hall of Fame. So there's like a 25-person digital team or so. And I'm the only web.com tour focus person. And I hire freelancers to help with the video editing and some writing and some of the graphics. And I do some of that stuff myself. I'm basically the quarterback / kind of coordinator. Just everything kind of comes through me, and I set the content plans. And basically it's my job to figure out the story of the web.com tour and the players and figure out the best ways to bring it to life through all the digital mediums that we have these days.
Yeah, that's really cool. One thing that I always find interesting is basically how people get into jobs, because I consider your job very cool. As somebody who loves golf, it's like kind of a dream job to just cover golf all the time. I don't know if you went to school to in journalism, or if you played golf in school, or how did you get into basically that job that you have now?
So I basically grew up just loving golf, and I was never very good, but I was fascinated with the storylines and kind of the grinders and the journeymen and the whole arc of golf. And I guess not too many kids think of it like that, but I was lucky that I did, because going into college, I just randomly kind of had the goal of covering the web.com tour and, going through classes. And I went to Syracuse for journalism and marketing, had a double major in those. And my professors were always like, you're probably the only person in the world who is thinking they want to cover AAA golf. Because it's similar to the PGA Tour, but it's ultimately, if you compare it to baseball, it's at AAA. So when I was going into junior year of college, I started trying to get internships in golf and couldn't really land one. So I had the idea for my senior project at Syracuse, like my capstone project pretty much for journalism and the honors program. I traveled to 5 web.com tour events and wrote like a blog and a short book and caddied for a couple players and got that kind of inside the ropes experience. And because of that, I was able to meet some people with the tour. And then the next summer, I interned at Golf World magazine, worked there for about a year. They folded the print magazine. I lost my job and was able to get some freelance work writing for the web.com tour, for the PGA Tour, and did that for about a year and a half. And then this position kind of came about to be the content manager as the department grew and the tour invested more in digital. So kind of just the right place at the right time, and followed the path for a few different levels, kind of, but ultimately powered by the fact that 10 years ago, I decided I thought it would be cool to cover the web tour because when I was little, I was fascinated by the career arc in golf. So it kind of goes back to that and just tracing that. And here I am. It's crazy. This is my.
Yeah, that's awesome though. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's pretty. I could picture your professor now looking at you, going, "Wait, you want to do what?" out of like all the other people in that journalism school, they talk about all the ESPN dreams and all these other things, and you're telling on the web.com. I love it. That's outstanding.
It's cool because it was just a unique, very niche thing, and just going out there, and it's awesome to be able to meet the players on their way up. And I almost like know the PGA Tour ranges just as well, if not better than some of the PGA Tour producers, because I know the guys coming up from the web tour, and you develop that relationship before the agents are out as much and the managers are out as much, and you get that more one-on-one time. It's a super unique thing, and you're able to become, I guess, develop more authentic friendships with them because it's before they are on the big tour and have a lot of money, and so their guard is not up as much. So it's a cool thing to be able to do, because I mean, there's so much talent on the web.com tour, and a bunch of the guys are going to make it. And with Q School not going right to the PGA Tour, you pretty much have to play the web tour unless you parlay 7 sponsor invites into status, which is incredibly hard to do. Only a few people manage that. So the web tour is pretty much where everyone comes through. So it's
got to be like a Joaquin Neiman type to do that. Yeah, not very many.
No. And Neiman didn't even make it through final stage. He finished around 100th, so he didn't get guaranteed web tour starts.
Wow.
He's a conditional member, but then he got some PGA Tour starts. It's crazy, the fine line. Like, Jordan Spieth missed at second stage. Brooks Koepka missed at second stage and went to Europe, but there's no guarantee. A lot of good players miss at Q School.
That's pretty crazy. Well, you mentioned you've been doing this for about 10 years now, give or take, around the tour. What is one of your favorite memories of just following the web.com?
It just there's a lot of different ways to. I think the best memories are. So there's kind of 2 ways. There's just the travel and the adventures and getting to know the guys and being in different places and riding the bus and thinking about. I remember riding the bus with Andrew Landry for his first web.com tour round in Panama and just, shooting the crap with him about whatever, and then thinking 3 years later he's winning on the PGA Tour, and you think back to these bus rides and just being in these small cities like Lafayette, Louisiana, having a crawfish boil, and being in Springfield, Missouri, and just hanging out. But then I guess the most poignant moments are when you see a guy get their PGA Tour card that's been kind of toiling at it for a long time. Like Chris Thompson, he's 42. He has been a pro for 20 years, never played the PGA Tour. In Portland, he finishes his final round this year, and he's just greeted by a group of friends and family, and you can just sense the emotion of what it means to get to that level, to get your PGA Tour card. And Rob Oppenheim a few years ago got that 25th card in the web.com tour finals at age 35 to get it for the first time. And even guys getting back like Josh Teeter after 3 years on the web.com tour, just a very well-liked guy across golf. He finishes high enough at Ellie Mae Stonebray this year to secure that card, and just the emotion and, tears are coming out, and you can just tell how much it means to them. Those are the moments that really stick with you in this job, is when the guys make it. And then on the other side too, like this year, Justin Lauer had a 8-footer to get his PGA Tour card for the first time in his 8th year as a pro, and just slips out, and you can sense it. And that stuff kind of lasts with you. And earlier in the year, he's talking in an interview saying like about the fine line of golf and how it's one shot here, one shot there. And thinking back to that 6 months later, it's almost like he cast his own prediction in a way, and just about the fine line of it, and guys missing and then making it, and guys like JT Poston 2 years ago who Mondays into an event, chips in on the last hole to finish top 25, finishes third the next week, goes on to get his tour card from no status. And it's just these blend of stories that it's hard to like pick out one moment, I guess, because it's the story and the themes are the same every year, but the stories change, and you're getting to know these guys and like classic offbeat things like Dan Mazziota living out of his car, drives, camps out a couple nights, drives from Florida to Lafayette, Mondays in, has his best finish of his career, while pretty much his car is just packed with camping gear. And he spends the season like living either out of his car or at campgrounds or in people's barns, and just crazy stuff that you learn about. And guys like Ty Tryon, who was a can't miss phenom like 20 years ago and still trying to Monday, and you sit down with him and get his story about going to China and back here. And I don't know, I definitely start to ramble, but it's just such, like, it's hard to think of one memory because everything kind of blends together, and there's so many cool stories on the web tour. Why it's so fun to cover.
I can only imagine, because there's like, you know, obviously if you're out there grinding on this tour, the web.com tour, it's completely different than grinding on the PGA tour, because you're in small cities, like you already mentioned, small city down in Louisiana, Springfield, Missouri. You know, the PGA tour is not going to these places. They're going to Boston and Chicago or whatever, LA and those types of places. So just maybe if you can explain a little bit of the difference between, you know, life on the PGA tour versus life on the web.com tour. Like, what's the big differences, and maybe just some small things that people would never think of?
Yeah, so definitely the big difference is you have the crowds. The crowds, you know, you like to think that on the web tour there are events that definitely support and have good turnouts, but on the PGA tour, the final days, like, it's nuts. People are lining the fairways. You have people in and out. You have that genuine just electricity in the air, and you can get that on the web tour, but it might be just on 1 or 2 holes on 1 or 2 days. And you have, just in the lifestyle, you have the sponsorships where it's hard to travel on the web. You're going cross country, you're going international, whereas on the PGA tour, you still have some of that, but a lot of it, you have your clothing sponsors, you have your hat sponsors, you have your apparel sponsors, you have equipment sponsors. So a lot of your travel is going to be just naturally subsidized by your sponsorships and other fees you might get. Whereas on the web tour, you're paying for the travel. You're not making as much money. You're still having to pay your caddy fees and pay your rental cars, and you have to pay for a rental car. Whereas on the PGA tour, you might get a courtesy car. So there's these things. It's cheaper to travel on the PGA tour, but you're making more money. The purses are 10 times as much. And you're just going to have random stuff that just happens to be more picked up for you because you're on the PGA tour. So it just exponentially kind of divides. And the web.com tour, if you're not playing well, if you're missing cuts, you're going to lose money. Like, just because you're out on the web.com tour doesn't mean you're necessarily going to make it or have a profitable year. You still need to make cuts and play well because you don't have that built-in sponsorship things. And a lot of it is mirrored the same, and they definitely build up, like, mirror the web.com tour to the PGA tour with the Monday Pro-Ams and the Wednesday Pro-Am, and Tuesdays when you do the practice day, and you have the split tee start on 2 tees, and you have the rules officials there, and you have the drug tests, and everything that's like it would be on the PGA tour is the same as it is to prepare you for the next level. So the competition-wise and the structure of how you play is the same, but it's all that ancillary stuff of just really trying to make it and trying to make ends meet. Like, there's that financial pressure on you on the web.com tour that won't be there on the PGA tour, because even if you miss all your cuts, you're still going to have enough sponsored deals in general to be able to pick up and pay for your travel and subsidize and still in general have a profitable year. So I guess that's basically the biggest differences. We always say it's kind of the PGA tour is 10 times the web tour with the purses and the crowds and the sponsors. It's basically like the 10 times rule.
Do you know what, like, the average, just off the top of your head, I know this is kind of putting you on the spot, what's the average, just saying a guy makes a cut and finishes last, do you know what he gets paid?
Yeah. It's about $1,500 to $2,000.
Jesus.
And that's travel, you know?
Yeah.
And you have
compared to the pro.
And then you got to pay your caddy, and then obviously you're staying in a hotel that week, and so yeah, you might be breaking even.
And you can sometimes there are a lot of host families, and a lot of tournaments are good with that. So players will stay in host houses, so where they won't have to pay for the rental car or for the hotel. And there's houses on the course, so people don't have to pay for a rental car. So there are definitely ways to keep travel down, but just the flight and the caddy will pretty much get you to that 1,500. So you have to make the cut and have a decent weekend to be profitable for sure.
Gotcha.
Wow. But then, if you do win, it is between 100 and 126,000, and then the finals events are 180,000, but that is getting to the finals. So if you win or finish top 5, you are definitely going to have a nice week. But money drops off kind of from there. It's definitely very top heavy. Like to finish in the top 25, you need to scatter in a few big weeks. You can't finish 10th to 20th and get your PGA Tour card.
Because that's based on money, correct? It's not like a point system like the FedEx. It's all based on money and money earned throughout the year, correct?
Throughout the year, yep. Throughout the regular season, which is 23 events, and the top 25 get their PGA Tour card, and then there's the finals, which is that money list is 26 to 75 on the Web Tour, and then 126 to 200 on the FedEx Cup points, which is the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Plus non-members that might get in and medicals, and then the finals 25 is comprised of that list. Then there's 50 that get their tour card, but the finals 25 is basically that 4-event series, which is more of like a Q school type of thing. Whereas the first 25 is from the regular season.
Nice. And you just mentioned the kind of getting to that final 25, seeing guys miss 8-foot putts and kind of what goes on there. How it's maybe one of the dumbest questions I've ever said, but really, how nerve-wracking is it? Like, how does it feel watching these guys? Because you can probably witness it on their faces when they're going up to line up these putts and everything, because they all know what's going on. They know what's on the line. What's the feeling like when you're sitting there watching this?
They more or less know, and sometimes things can change where you think I might need a birdie, I might need a par, but there's that tension in the air. And even the guys who are the most happy-go-lucky guys in general, like when you get to that last hole, when you get to that 72nd hole of the final tournament of the Web.com Tour Championship, and crap, I probably need a birdie to get my PGA Tour card, you just feel the tension in the air. And a lot of fans who are there, they kind of know too, and they get the sense because they're following on their phones, especially these days where with Twitter and everything, you have these live kind of can keep track of it live, and the Web Tour community is kind of all conversing about it as it's going on. So everyone kind of knows, and everyone gets quieter, and it's a very real emotion. It's like, I mean, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and I like when we're kind of driving like 4th and 8 on the 30 with 30 seconds left, and we need to keep the game alive. It's like you just know this is it. You have the feeling that this is it. Or Syracuse, the last possession, you're down 1. It's like that. It's that do or die moment. And at the end of the season, going for that 25th card, that there's nothing more real than that in all the golf. That's more than, it's probably right up there in the tension with trying to win the biggest PGA Tour events. Like, it's definitely, the pressure around the bubble is more pressure packed than at the end of a tournament for the winner, for who's going to win or who's going to finish second. Because on the web, you finish first, you finish second. It's a huge step toward getting your PGA Tour card either way, even if you do come in second. Obviously, you want to win, but it's not as much of a do or die situation at most of the season events. But when you get to the end, whether it's Portland, the final event of the regular season, or Atlantic Beach, Florida, which is Web.com Tour Championship, that final day around that bubble for the 25th card, that's the most real pressure. It's as real as it's going to get, really, in sports, because it playing the PGA Tour changes your life. You're playing for a tenth of the money, and you're established at the highest level of golf. Like, you can always say that you made it to the highest level of golf, to the PGA Tour, which is pretty much all these guys' dreams growing up, is to play on the PGA Tour. Like, there's the dreams of to win the Masters and US Open and the Players and win tournaments, but the ultimate, like, the root of the dream is playing the PGA Tour. And and this is to get that. This is to get there. Like, making the Web.com Tour is a huge step in your career, and it's big, and it legitimizes you as a pro. And then getting to the PGA Tour legitimizes you at the highest level, really.
Yeah. Yeah, because one thing that, like, people lose track of a lot, and you're talking about like, between the PGA Tour and the Web.com Tour, what, 300 guys ish, somewhere in that neighborhood out of
150 status on the PGA Tour, top 150 keep it. It's 125 have full plus winners and people who have other different categories, and then exactly.
Yeah. So out of what, I don't know how many people in the world now, but 7 billion people in the world. I mean, so you're talking about the top of the top here, and I can only imagine what that pressure is like. Because I've seen it on obviously the Golf Channel. They show it quite often, especially coming down those last holes. It's pretty insane. Now, one thing that gets brought up quite often in our little Twitter circle is a couple of things. One being, really just two celebrities who are getting some playing time on, and I know it's been kind of controversial on on the Web.com Tour. One being obviously Tony Romo, who I think is going to be down trying to at Q School, correct?
He played first stage of Q School last week in Garland, Texas, and he missed easily. He missed by like 20 shots. But he was there though on merit. Like he had a high enough handicap to pay his entry fee, and he made it through pre-qualifying. So he had every right to be there. That was not a spot given. But well, Stephen Curry as well.
I mean, what are your thoughts on Steph? Obviously, you cover the tour. You get to go out there. I'm assuming you're at the Ellie Mae Classic when he plays in it.
Yeah.
How big? I guess explain how big of a draw he is, and just kind of your thoughts on him being able to play in that particular tournament.
I mean, the thing that some people definitely lose sight of and complain about is that it is an unrestricted sponsor invite, and each event gives 1 or 2 spots basically for the sponsor to use and help draw interest to the tournament and help bring attention to their name and the title. Just even you here bringing up Ellie Mae Classic, like that's good for Ellie Mae, the company, to have their name spread there. And so it's definitely meant for that, and because as opposed to, you could say the 157th person on the money list who's the first alternate, you could say they get that spot on merit, but the field is set where you have X amount of players who get in on merit, and then you have these other 2 sponsor invites that could go to anyone. And a lot of times it'll go to the local club pro. It'll go to a high school kid. Usually it goes to someone who will miss the cut anyways, but it doesn't get the national level because it's not Stephen Curry. It's not a world star. So the spot, it rarely goes to someone who is actually going to make the cut. So but some people will, I guess, complain about anything. So you get complaints about that. People will complain just to complain. But with Stephen Curry, it's awesome. It brings a draw. It doesn't bring like an insane amount of fans, but it's definitely, the biggest turnout you'll see on a Thursday and Friday for any group all year. You have a few hundred people walking, and it can get probably up to 1,000 people walking with the group. And that course is not easy to walk. TPC Stonebrae, there's a lot of hills and it's very spread out. So to get that many people up there, the course is on top of a big hill. So to get that is definitely very cool. And this year we had it on PGA Tour Live, so their whole round was streamed, and it drew over 1 million views across Facebook and Twitter and the platform. So being able to have that reach on the Web.com Tour, you would never get those kind of numbers with just a normal group of up-and-coming guys who are going to have great careers, but their notoriety isn't there yet. And Stephen Curry, he's able to help draw that and help bring the attention to the Web.com Tour, as well as the 2 guys he's playing with. Like this year, fans watching got to learn about Martin Traynor and Cameron Champ, 2 guys who are now on the PGA Tour that played with Steph that week. And he does it. He loves being out there. He loves competing. He does not like to take the spotlight. He knows that he's there to help bring the spotlight onto the whole tour, and it's going to direct to him mostly for sure, but he knows that it will still help the tour in general and bring up the rising tide that lifts all boats, if you will. But I'm all for it. It's great. It's been awesome the last 2 years, and I definitely hope he comes back. And if something like that were to happen every week, it would probably be a novelty type of thing that would wear off. But it's great for the once a year that we do it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll totally back that. So go ahead, Bubba.
Yeah, living out here by the Ellie Mae Classic, I could see Steph coming every time. As long as he's a Warrior, he'll be out there. Like, he loves golf so much. Like you said, he's doing it for the tour, for the event. He's not doing it just to get his name out there. So
he doesn't need his name out there.
Exactly.
No,
so that's why I see it as an option. So we mentioned Tony Romo, we mentioned Steph Curry. One question real quick on that is we are seeing more and more of these, athletes when they're outside of their main sport that are actually really good at golf. Do you see them ever sticking and making a web.com field and like on the whole tour for a year?
Mm-hmm. And with Romo, it shows how hard it is. I mean, he made it through pre-qual, and that first stage he misses by 20-something shots in
Jesus,
20 or 21 or so. But to make it through and having to make it through pre-qual and first and second and final stage, when you think of like the fact that Jordan Spieth and Brooks Koepka couldn't make through second stage and how hard it is, you have to be good enough. You can't fake it through Q School. So for one of them, and Romo, he said he'll be back. This was his first full year really committed to golf after retirement, and he's going to try. He's going to keep playing. So it would take a special athlete. I mean, is Curry going to want to do that and put all that time into golf after his career? It's hard to say. He definitely loves the game, and he's definitely committed to being around it. But to commit to the point where you want to go to Q School and then live the life as a traveling pro, which definitely is not easy. It's 20, 25 weeks a year away from your family on the road, being in these different locales, playing pro-ams, practicing. It's a whole life commitment, and it doesn't let you have a quote-unquote normal life. And obviously not everyone necessarily wants a quote-unquote normal life, but for an athlete who is committed 10, 20 years to playing their main sport at the highest level, to go back and play pro golf, it's got to be a special type of person, and Romo could very well be that person, but you have to match up the desire with the talent, and to see that, it's definitely a 1 in a million type of odds. So I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I would definitely be shocked if a star athlete from another sport were to ever legitimately qualify and play a full Web.com Tour season. It would be awesome. It would be awesome, but I'll be rooting for it. But it would be crazy. It would be something. It would be very, unexpected.
You mentioned a handful of the locations you get to travel to for the tour. You said 23 stops on the regular season plus the playoffs at the end. If you had to name just a couple stops, what are your favorite stops to go to?
Yeah, so I love actually Boise, Idaho. I've been there a couple times, and it's a cool city. They embrace the tournament, always good crowds. It's been there 29 years. Next year will be the 30th year there. And we do fun stuff, like the Boise State team has us out to that blue turf, and we get to hit trick shots. The players hit trick shots, and we do a video around that. And the downtown's great, good nightlife. So I always enjoyed Boise. I mentioned Lafayette, Louisiana, best food in the world. I love the food there. I've never had better food across a week than. And they do a great job with the Pro-Am and the vibe, the Cajun vibe. Everyone's so nice. I always make sure to have Lafayette on my schedule. That's one that I always pencil in. And then I enjoy Kansas City because the tournament team is great. A lot of the tournament teams are great, but they're always really fun. And it's a cool vibe there in Kansas City and some really good barbecue. And Portland, Oregon is awesome. That's a cool vibe. That's the last event of the regular season, so it's always very busy there. So I'm always very stressed, living in a perpetual state of stress. I always joke that during the season, which is half the year, I live in perpetual stress, and the other half of the year is more along the lines of like being in high school, where you have your job during the day, and then which is school, and then you can live a more normal life outside of work. Whereas during the season, it's all just go, working all the time, which is fine because I love it, but it definitely is nice to decompress a bit in the off season. And then I'm being from Buffalo, we have a tournament up near there, like an hour from home. So that's always cool because, my family comes and some friends and my old golf coach and stuff like that. So those are a few. And then it's always fun to go down to South America and the Bahamas to start the year. Can't
The
complain.
Bahamas.
That doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Bahamas, nice.
I would pencil that one in every year too, Kevin.
Yeah, it's nice for sure. It's not Nassau, it's smaller islands, but they're beautiful. And I mean, those island drinks and the Goombay smashes and the pina coladas.
Perfect.
Nice.
That's really, really cool stuff, man. Kind of transition a little bit into, obviously we just had the web.com finals, 25 graduates, number one, and probably the most hyped guy coming in. I mean, I don't know that many of these guys are really super hyped, but
it's hard to be fully hyped off the web.com.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. Unless you're kind of coming back, maybe potentially from having a name or previously winning on the PGA Tour or whatever, and just kind of making the comeback tour or something. Like I think if Smiley Kaufman went to the web and was coming back, I'd be hyped about it. I'm a Smiley fan, but
no, he's great. He's
awesome. Sungjae M won the money list, correct? He won like the regular season. Is that correct?
He won, and then he kept it all the way through because basically the 25 money list of the guys from the regular season that carries through the finals. So those guys are ordered based on where they stand on the whole 27 event list. He actually won the season opener in the Bahamas, Exuma, to take the money lead, and he kept it throughout the whole year. First player ever to do that. He did not relinquish the money lead. And he was like 102 under par total for the year, just crazy stats. Led total birdies, led rounds under par. Pretty much every metric he led her within the top 5, just a completely dominant season. And he qualified for the U.S. Open, and he got to the top 100 in the world just playing on the Web Tour, so he got invited to the PGA Championship, where he made the cut. So the guy led the Web Tour money list wire to wire and played 2 majors. So pretty much as good a season as you can really have at this level before getting your PGA Tour card. He pretty much did, which is crazy. All sorts of metrics. And there's a player of the year vote. There's 5 guys on the ballot box, and I kind of smile. Because it's like, how could a player not vote for the guy who led the money list the whole year?
Right.
And pretty much every performance stat.
Well, maybe we should be hyping him up more, Bubba.
Yeah, I guess we should be.
There's no reason not to think that year would have had him get to the, it's hard to say he'd get to the Tour Championship because there are so many good players, but I truly believe that the year he would have finished top 30 in the FedEx Cup. He just killed it. Not many players, and it's such a fine line between the tours. And to go just as a 20-year-old and go make the cut at a major, just kind of sight unseen, just while playing off the Web Tour. And he didn't even have a place to live. He lived hotel to hotel this year. Jeez. He literally moved
20 years old.
20 years old, played Q School last year, played second stage, played final stage from South Korea, and just had a couple suitcases and just decided that he's just going to go and just live tournament to tournament, try to get his PGA Tour card, and then end of the season, this fall, settle down and get a place to live. He's thinking Atlanta. He's not quite sure yet, maybe Dallas, but he's just kind of, his parents are traveling with him, and they're just enjoying America, trying to find some Korean food they can, trying to find some new food. He enjoyed Chicago a lot. He explored some of Chicago when he was there, but just, living that travel life, learning America and playing some great golf, dominant golf while doing it.
Yeah, they make movies about stuff like that. That's pretty crazy.
That's a really cool story.
If he goes and has a great career, there should be a movie made about this year. This travel year.
Just getting there is crazy. Just like you said, he picked up his bags and traveled and hotel to hotel. That's a pretty that is as minor league as it gets right there. Like they made Bull Durham for minor leaguers like that. This is, I don't know, he's 20. He's not the 45-year-old journeyman. So big difference.
Oh, fun guy. Absolutely.
Let's talk number 2, Sam Burns. We saw him quite a bit. He had 15 starts on tour. We saw him with Tiger one weekend. He made a name for himself when he was around, but he did very well on the tour. What do you have on Sam Burns?
It's interesting because he had that round where he played with Tiger in the final round of the Honda Classic, and he was very hyped coming out of college, and you figure he might get partly those 7 sponsor invites, but it just goes to show how good the PGA Tour and how good everyone is that he just couldn't walk his way onto the PGA Tour. He had to earn it on the web.com tour. And Sam's a very soft-spoken guy. It's interesting. He out of college, he likes to be low-key and just kind of, when he's out of the tournament mode, he likes to just get away from the game. He lived at the house of Buffalo Bills, ironic because I'm a Bills fan, lived at the house of Buffalo Bills defensive end Kyle Williams for the fall last year. Their friends, fellow LSU guy, and kind of helped take care of the house while Kyle was off playing in Buffalo. And then Sam, this year, he moved to a small town with 1 stoplight in the middle of Louisiana. So that's where he lives. He has a place in a very small town. His coach is near there, and he just likes to get away from the game. But in terms of his game, I mean, he's definitely got all the talent. He won our Savannah event this spring with birdies on his final 3 holes, and contended a bunch. And obviously, as a young kid, there's still growing pains. He missed some cuts, had some high rounds, but he's got all the talent in the world, and he's not afraid of the limelight. He also contended at the Valspar Championship on the PGA Tour in March. So he was incredibly close. He was a couple birdies away from getting right on the PGA Tour that way. He falls a little short, has a couple more chances, doesn't get it done. So he plays the whole summer on the web.com tour. But the thing that impressed me about him is no ego whatsoever, was up for any ask, had some fun, did some, crazy requests that we asked of him, and was down for just most, like he didn't really say no once to anything. And for a guy who has that much talent, who's been in PGA Tour events and was a Division I Player of the Year, to just really be so just down to earth. And you can tell that he's someone who comes from a good family. There's a player, Scott Harrington, who took a leave of absence for his wife battling Hodgkin's lymphoma this year, and Sam pledged $100 per birdie for the second half of the season to that. And his parents did the same thing too. So there's good stuff to come on Sam Burns. I'm excited to see what he will do on the PGA Tour, and he's definitely a name to watch. And it's funny, he's actually not considered a rookie because
I was kind of wondering that.
He starts, because we did a file today, top 10 rookies to watch, and he would have been on there, top 2 or 3 with Sungjae if he was eligible. But because he played more than 7 PGA Tour starts this season, he's not considered a rookie.
Well, I think also too, if you beat Tiger Woods in the final round on a Sunday, you probably shouldn't be considered a rookie.
I think he asserted himself top 10 at the Honda Classic at PGA National, which is
a tough golf course.
Park. That course, there's trouble everywhere.
Really tough.
Free on a course with water everywhere.
Real quick, before we get to the next player for you, Jesse, if you can tell us, what were your 5 top rookies?
So I actually didn't do the file. I'm tricky in obviously I'm not. I try to be as unbiased and take opinion stuff out of my stuff, because my job is ultimately to promote the players and develop the relationships with them and help convey the stories to the public. So not that I don't, I do expert picks and I do that. And I've done these rankings before, but I was happy to divest this top 10 ranking to one of our writers to avoid having that. Not that I won't ever do it, but sometime. But his list, but I helped him. I gave him some suggestions. I bolded some names on a list that I wanted him to include. Long Jay was number 1 on the list, who I fully backed. Kramer Hickok was number 2, which I fully back. And then Cameron Champ, number 3, led the tour in driving distance, 341 yards this year. Prodigious length. Probably hits it as far as anyone. Brooks Koepka, maybe, if they go pound for pound, hard as you can hit it, could maybe get it further, but it's pretty close. Cameron Davis was number 4, who is a young Australian, won the Australian Open last year, won in Nashville this year on the web and got his card through the finals, and no reason not to think that he'll kill it on the PGA Tour. So those were the top 4. And then I believe Anders Albertson was number 5, if not top 5, not top 6 or 7. Just one of the most consistent all year. He had this insane streak of rounds in the 60s. I think it was around 40 or so, or rounds under par. Just most weeks he was up near the top of the leaderboard. Tons of low final rounds. He joked earlier in the year that his strategy was just to, start off middle of the pack, be around the cut line Thursday, move to around 20th on Friday, just, nice moving day Saturday, and just slowly creep up the leaderboard all week to fly under the radar. And he was joking with me about that in March. He uncannily managed to kind of do that pattern all throughout the year. It was crazy. Just ease his way in the tournaments and then pounce on the weekend. Stay out of the limelight, don't get too many requests early week, and then shoot a final around 62 to finish 3rd and be all good. He did a lot this year, but he's someone, just his consistency and the way he approaches the game, and such a sharp mind. Georgia Tech grad, and embraces the grind and the practice and the challenge and the strategy side of the game. So Hickok, Champ, Davis, Albertson. That's a list of 5 that was on our top 5, and it wasn't quote unquote my list, but I fully embraced and supported the list. If I wouldn't have published it.
You can find that on your Twitter, or where are you posting this stuff at, I guess?
Yep. It's on the PGAtour.com/web tour
Gotcha.
website and on web.com tour, Facebook, and Twitter.
Good
It's up
deal.
there.
Sweet.
We'll get some traffic over there for you. One guy who's near and dear to my heart. I'm from Moorhead, Kentucky, and Josh Teeter is a Moorhead State University alumni, just like myself.
Eagle, right?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly correct. Yeah, and actually, one of my really good friends who I played high school golf with is on his bag. Lee. Yep. And he's normally on KJ's bag, but KJ Choi is down for right now, so he's on Teeter's bag currently. So I'm really excited for Teeter's year. Any thoughts on Josh?
I mean, like I brought it up earlier in my memories with Josh's when he got his card at the LA May Classic, he was close, and he's been close the last couple of years, and finally being able to pull it out and just the wealth of support, and with his wife Ashley and his 2 young sons, and being out there, and he's definitely one of the most likable guys on tour. No one really has a bad thing to say about Josh. I remember Josh, he was on tour for a few years before he lost his card the first time, and when I was starting at the 2014 Web Tour Finals and getting my feet wet in this new job and still kind of nervous about approaching players who had been on tour before, and I just remember going up to Josh and just being completely impressed with his demeanor and his easygoing nature, and he is just such a, like, we interviewed him about like fun facts about himself, and he's like, yeah, I like to go to the movies just for the popcorn, just these random clips that he just say, and he's like, yeah, I'm funny, I think, in my own way, and he's just such a chill guy, and everything, he loves just baseball and basketball and different sports, and you always see him at the wiffle ball games, and he's out there, like he'll come out on a Friday afternoon after he's done and just watch golf and just watch people finish the afternoon, just because he enjoys being around it and he enjoys the camaraderie, and in the very real emotion when he got his card at Ellie Mae and seeing how well it did on social media, just resonating across the really web tour and golf, clued in golf community of people who know how hard he works and how much it means to him, and his game really each year finishing 30th, 40th on the web tour money list. Like he said that he felt like his game was good enough to keep his PGA Tour card if he was out there, which I fully back that sentiment. It's just, a lot of 10th, 15th, 20th place finishes. It would still be good weeks on the PGA Tour that weren't quite enough to finish top 25 the last 2 years. But this year he got it done, and there's no reason to think Josh can't contend and keep his card and win. Still looking for that first PGA Tour win. I know he was second to Tiger at Torrey Pines a few years back, and for him to win on tour would be very cool, and he's definitely got the game to do it. There's no reason to think that his best golf isn't ahead of him, and a very well-deserved return for Teeter, for sure.
Very well set up. That's awesome.
A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up again. Thanks for your time tonight, Kevin. We weren't going to go over all 25 guys, and you mentioned like Cam Champ's a guy we're all real big on this. Cam Davis. It's hard not to like Cam Champ, like you mentioned, and what we've seen from him in the past. Out of the guys that are coming up this year that we're going to get to see, some, like you mentioned, we've seen before a lot for the first time. Are there any other guys we should really keep our eyes on this year that you think might kind of surprise people, like we've seen with some of the recent grads in years past?
So there's a guy that is probably on no one's radar. His name's Seth Reeves. He's a Georgia Tech alum, and he hits it a long way. He's one of the longest drivers up there with anyone, and when he really goes at it, he can get it out there. And he's had this steady progression over the last couple of years from being, fringe web tour player to getting his card and keeping his card last year to this year. He was on that bubble going into the last couple of events of the regular season and really turned it on, and then got his card through the finals, just got on a run. Being a younger player, he's someone who might go through some growing pains and miss some cuts, but he's someone that I could see just out of nowhere. It's funny because to us on the web.com tour, it's not out of nowhere. We know all these guys and we know their talent, but once it's a Sunday afternoon and Jim Nantz is calling it, and this guy no one's ever heard of, and it feels like it's out of nowhere. I could see Seth Reeves being one of those guys who kind of blindsides the announcers as just, they'll describe him as this obscure player when in reality he has all the talent. I could see him picking off a win at some point in this young season. And the other guy was actually the guy who got the 25th card in the finals, Jim Knaus, went to the Colorado School of Mines, first player to ever have his full PGA Tour card from there. And he has had a steady progression through the regular season, was 74th on the money list entering Portland, finished top 5, I believe, to get in the finals, and had a strong, very consistent finals to get his card. And what I try to look for is, even for the guys who are in their late 20s, you might think about, if it's taken them so long to get to the tour, like, is it a fluke or are they there to stay? And I like to look at a constant progression. And he's someone who was on the mini tours for a couple years, got conditional status on the web, had a year where he lost his card, came back, and this year got his card, kept his card, and made it through the finals. So he's someone that I just kind of, my instincts tell me he's on this steady upward track, getting better, very good driver of the golf ball. His short game kind of probably could use some work, but based on just the stats and what you see out there, obviously I don't see these guys day in, day out, shot in, shot out, so I can't give too quantifiable stuff. It's more anecdotally, but Knaus is someone who I could see fine-tuning his short game, getting dialed in around the greens, and saving those pars when he needs to instead of making bogeys. He makes a ton of birdies, shoots a lot of good scores, and Jim Knaus is someone who I could see being talked about for years to come. And actually, could be a hot take, but someone who will have multiple tour wins and have, a 5 or so win PGA Tour career. Someone that no one really knows about now, and he's been a pro for 8 years. But you look at a guy like Patton Kizzire a few years ago, who was on mini tours for a few years, gets his card, and goes on, and he's a 2-time winner this year and made the tour championship. And everyone works at their own pace, and a lot of those younger guys like the Cam Champ and the Cam Davis and the Sung Jae and the Kramer, they're going to get the buzz, and for good reason. But that doesn't mean that some of these kind of late 20s guys just getting their card for the first time can't kill it. And Knaus is someone that I am going to put my, eggs in that basket. He's my dark horse to have a good career.
I like it. Well, Kevin, we really, really appreciate your time tonight. You're going to be following the tour again this year, as we expect, and all the great work over there at PGAtour.com. I believe you said /web.com.
/webcom. Yep.
Webcom. And then go
Web Tour. Goes to
Web Tour. There we go. And check him out on Twitter at WebTourKevin. Kevin, I could literally sit and listen to the stories you have on these guys for a long, long time. Like, it was just fascinating. It was fascinating to me, just hearing all these kind of the grind, the achievement for some of these guys. It's how it's not luxurious, but there's a lot about it that's really fascinating for people like Jesse, who's played golf his whole life. I played golf for many years now. We're just sports people. We've competed all our life, and there's a lot to respect out of the grind that these guys have and the determination to keep going. So we really, really appreciate your time tonight, and hopefully we'll get to chat again sometime.
Absolutely. Always happy to come on. Thank you guys for having me. Enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks for the interest in the web tour and what we do. It's, it means a lot. It's sometimes you do it and you never really know who's following or who's watching, and you just do it, and getting the positive feedback is always appreciated. So yeah, always happy to help. Come on.
Great stuff, man. Everybody needs to go out and follow at WebTourKevin is his handle. He's the one who's going to be bringing out the digital content as far as up and coming guys who potentially could be on the PGA Tour. So definitely go and give him a follow. Also, all the other web.com. Any other good follows that you can think of for Twitter?
Around the web tour, you have Alex Wood, who's one of our communications officials. Web tour Alex, she's good. She gives a lot of the similar stats and tidbits along the way. And the media official, there's actually we had Web Tour Royce, but he transitioned recently to the PGA Tour digital side, and so there's a new guy, Preston Smith. But I don't think he needs to kind of earn his
his Twitter.
I don't think his Twitter yet. I won't give him the endorsement. Yeah, I don't think he's made it Web Tour yet. Yeah, we'll get there when there's that. It's definitely a small niche community of Web Tour follows. For sure.
Good stuff. For us who love golf, it doesn't matter if it's web.com tour or if it's, just going out and playing on our local golf course. It's fun to watch and play golf. So appreciate you coming on.
I'll go watch Club Pro guy in the Mexican tour. So it's all cool with me.
Go watch the Mexican mini tour. Yeah, for sure.
The 12 team scramble.
Exactly.
Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Count it as a putt made.
Well, all right, Kevin. Again, thank you very much, everybody. This was the Always Pressing PGA DFS podcast special edition, talking about the web.com and the top 25 graduates for this season with Web Tour Kevin Prise. Thanks for listening. Catch you guys later.